You know, in this world that's just buzzing with notifications and endless scrolls, finding any kind of focus feels almost impossible, right? But what if? What if the best advice for our super modern problems came from a source that's, well, ancient? Today, we're going to tap into some wisdom from way, way back and see what some old forest gods have to say about our busy, distracted minds. All right, let's get into it. I mean, have you ever sat down to do something, something important, and your mind is just everywhere else, a million miles away? Or maybe you're trying to relax, but you just can't shut off the internal noise. Well, you are definitely not alone. Feeling pulled in all these different directions is a classic human problem. And sometimes, don't you just wish someone would just show up and tell you exactly what to do? Well, believe it or not, for a few ancient monks, that is pretty much what happened.
Okay, so let's go back in time. I'm talking about 2,500 years ago, to the deep, quiet forests of ancient India. Just picture it, monks, sitting all by themselves, dedicating their entire lives to meditation. Now that sounds super peaceful, right? But it was also incredibly, incredibly hard. And as it turns out, they weren't completely alone. They had these unseen observers, kind of like guardians of the forest, who were watching them very, very closely.
Now, when we hear the word spirit, our minds might go to, something spooky. But these beings, called devata in the Pali language, they were totally different. Think of them less like ghosts and more like wise, compassionate coaches or mentors. They literally lived in the trees and the forests, and they were really invested in the monks succeeding. So when they saw a monk who was struggling, they didn't just stand by and watch. Nope, they actually stepped in.
All right, so first up, let's talk about a problem I think every single one of us knows very well, the wandering mind. You sit down to do one thing, and your brain just immediately goes, hey, let's think about everything else instead. Your to-do list, that weird thing you said yesterday, what's for dinner? The monks? Yeah, they were exactly the same.
So here's the scene from our source, the Viveka Sutta. We've got a monk. He heads out into the forest specifically to find some solitude, right? To get some peace and quiet. But instead of focusing, his mind is just flooded. He's thinking about household thoughts, home, family, all the stuff he's supposed to have left behind. He's physically there in the forest, but in his head, he's all the way back in town. And then, out of nowhere, a forest deity shows up. It sees the monk's inner struggle, all that turmoil, and this compassionate spirit offers up a piece of advice. It comes in the form of this beautiful verse in the original Pali. And what's cool is, the deity isn't mad. It's just trying to gently nudge him back in the right direction. And the advice just gets right to the heart of the problem. The deity is basically saying, look, you came out here seeking seclusion, but your mind is running right back to the outside world. You've got to master that longing for company. And that last part is just, wow. Like a bird shaking dust from its wings, shake off your passion. It's this idea that getting focused isn't a passive thing. It's an active, deliberate choice you have to make. Now, it's easy to think, oh, that's just a problem for beginners, but check this out. The sources show that even one of the most famous disciples, the Venerable Ananda, he fell into the exact same trap. This guy was a legend, known for his amazing memory, his kindness, but he got so wrapped up in teaching and dealing with people that his own personal practice started to slide.
So what happens? Yep, another forest deity appears. And this one does not mess around. The advice for Ananda is direct, it's sharp, and it's super practical. It's a total wake-up call from someone who can see he's drifting off course.
So let's break down what the deity said. It's basically a 3-step plan. Step 1. Retreat to the root of a tree. Get back to basics. Change your scenery. Step 2. Anchor nibbana in your heart. In other words, remember why you're doing this. Reset your intention. And step 3. Meditate. Do not be negligent. Just do the work. It's such a powerful reminder, right? When you're feeling overwhelmed, the answer is often to simplify and just get back to the core of what you're trying to do. But, it's not always about a wandering mind. The path to any big goal, whether it's spiritual or just life, it's full of other roadblocks. So what happens when your energy just tanks, when you feel lazy, or when that feeling of despair starts to set in? Well, you guessed it, the deities had some advice for that too. Okay, so on our next story, from the Upekkhā Sutta, a deity stumbles upon a monk who is just passed out, fast asleep in the middle of the day. He's not meditating, he's just totally given in to being sleepy and lazy. It's such a human moment, right? We've all been there. And the deity does not just let him sleep it off. No way. Instead, it hits him with another one of these powerful verses, and this one is designed to shock him awake, not just physically, but spiritually. This is not a gentle nudge. This is a 5-alarm fire. And the metaphor here is so powerful. The deity asks him, "Arise, why are you sleeping? What good is sleep for someone who is sick, who's been pierced by a dart?" Think about that. If you were literally walking around with an arrow stuck in you, would you take a nap? Of course not. You'd be desperately trying to get it out. The deity is saying our own inner suffering is that dart, and we just can't afford to be lazy about it. We have to wake up and deal with it.
But what about the deep emotional stuff? In another story, a monk is just completely overwhelmed by loneliness. He's out there all alone in the forest, and he can hear a party going on in a city nearby. And he starts thinking, I'm like a useless log, just discarded out here. He literally asks himself, could anyone be more miserable than me right now?
This next one might be my favorite intervention of all. A deity shows up, and it doesn't say, oh, don't be lonely. Instead, it offers him a totally radical shift in perspective. It basically tells him he is looking at his whole situation completely wrong.
And here's the wisdom. The deity says, many beings envy you, just as those in hell would envy one on their way to heaven. Wow, what a reframe. The deity is saying, you think you're at the bottom? There are countless beings in much worse situations who are looking up at you with total envy. This opportunity you have for quiet practice, it's what they dream of. And just like that, his solitude is transformed from a punishment into this incredibly precious, envied gift.
Okay, so what does all of this, these ancient stories about monks and forest gods, have to do with us, right here, right now? Well, these are way more than just old fables. They're basically a mirror for our own modern struggles with distraction, procrastination, and yeah, even despair.
I mean, think about it. The struggles are exactly the same, they just have a different look now. That monk daydreaming about his village, that's us mindlessly scrolling through social media. The monk who is too drowsy to practice, that's us hitting the snooze button on our own goals. The loneliness that monk felt, that's the same isolation we can feel even when we're connected to everyone online. The problems are timeless, and so is the advice.
And this, I think, is the most crucial point of all. These rebukes from the deities, they weren't about scolding or punishing. They were actually acts of deep compassion. They were like an external voice for the monk's own inner wisdom, that part of them that knew their real goals. It's the voice of compassionate, wakeful attention that can cut right through the fog of all our modern distractions.
So, as we finish up here, let me leave you with this one thought. We might not have deities popping out of the trees to set us straight, but we all have that inner voice, don't we? The one that knows when we're scrolling instead of creating, when we're putting things off instead of practicing, when we're giving in to that feeling of despair instead of remembering our own potential. So the question is, what is that compassionate, wakeful voice trying to tell you today?